In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
Looking for whole food supplements for your ketogenic lifestyle? Let me introduce you to Further Food. Go to furtherfood.com and you'll see that they source the highest quality ingredients on the planet. They have collagen peptides and my favorite, the gelatin powder to make those yummy gummies. And all of it is sourced from grass-fed, pasture-raised bovine collagen from Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. This is really high-quality collagen and gelatin. There's no hormones or antibiotics, it's non-GMO, and it's the most tasteless and easiest to use on the market. If you're not using collagen and gelatin, you need to be adding this to your ketogenic lifestyle. Collagen will help you curb your carb cravings. Again, head on over to furtherfood.com, enter the coupon code Jimmy at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your order. Elevate your wellness. Further Food. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, if you want to engage live in the content that we do on this show, you got to go follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. We also simulcast here live on Facebook Live. Thank you guys for being here as well. If you missed the live over on Instagram, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. After 24 hours, it does disappear, so you'll have to watch all of the past episodes, or not have to, you get to watch all the past episodes over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Also, youtube.com/livinglowcarbman. Finally, we had the best of the best moments of this here show. They're in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. We just hit 100 episodes of the Jimmy Rants podcast. So if you've never partaken in this show in audio form, it's a pretty cool little format, little slow jam music going on while Jimmy is ranting his butt off. So go check it out, Jimmy Rants podcast. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants is a little bit of good news for a change. I try to bring you guys both the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to nutritional health news. And a lot of times I'll focus in on some bad studies like the one I did earlier today that linked red meat to colorectal and bowel cancer. And all the flaws that were wrong with that. I'll sometimes tell you some of the behind the scenes antics that are going on with the food supply and the negativity that's involved there. But a lot of times I also want to bring you some good news that is happening. And one of those things that's happening, you guys, that I think is very good news as a good kind of first step in the right direction is what they're doing with food labeling. So I don't know if you remember back in 2016, about 3 years ago, they decided that they wanted to fix the food label to make it more useful to the consumer. So they made like calories appear bigger on it. They made different little changes. And one of the changes that they decided to make was to put this extra category under carbohydrates. So right now, when you go to carbohydrates on a nutrition label at the back of a package of food, it has total carbohydrates, and then as a subset of total carbohydrates, it lists dietary fiber, it lists sugar. There may be another category like other carbohydrates. They may list sugar alcohols, things like erythritol would be listed under that. But now they are adding this added sugars line. So what I want to talk about here today is this new added sugars line on the nutrition facts is a good first step in re-educating people about what's actually in their food. And before I get into this story that talks about the added sugars, I got to tell you a quick story. I was at the bank today. I needed to get a letter from the bank. Christine and I are trying to buy a property in North Carolina. And so they needed us to go to the bank to prove that we had the money that we claimed that we had, blah, 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 all that stuff. And she's like, so what do you do for a living? I said, well, I'm an author of books. Oh, really? What do you write about? It's like health and diet. Have you ever heard of keto? Oh, yeah, I tried that keto. It wasn't good. I said, well, what was wrong? She said, oh, I tried it. I know I probably didn't eat enough fat, but I'm so scared of fat. So I had a little bit of a conversation with her about how fat's not the enemy. It's not going to clog your arteries, blah, 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 blah. And so we got into looking at nutrition labels. And she said something about, oh, yeah, I buy avocado oil mayo. I said, oh, you do? What's it called? Oh, it's Kraft. I said, well, you realize the one from Kraft has like soybean oil, and that's highly inflammatory, and it's not all avocado oil. And she's like, really? I saw it was avocado oil on the front, and I got excited. I said, yeah, that's how they fool you. I said, turn it over on the back and look at the nutrition facts. And you'll see on the nutrition facts and then in the labeling of the ingredients exactly what's in that thing. And so she's an example of someone that this change probably won't matter much to, because she's only looking at the marketing that's happening on the front of the packaging. But so many people are now learning what's on the nutrition facts label. And so it's very encouraging to see that we now have changes happening with now added sugars label on foods. They say in this headline, may save many lives. A new nutrition facts label highlights the amount of added sugars that's in food, that it could prevent nearly 1 million cases of heart disease and type 2 diabetes, according to a new study. I wonder how they know that it's going to prevent that many just because it has added sugars on a label. Do you guys think, do you buy that? Do you buy that people are going to just suddenly go, oh, well, I didn't realize it had 40 grams of added sugars in that Snicker bar. You think that's going to make people stop buying the Snicker bar? I don't think so. The new label was first proposed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, in May of 2016. It now adds a new line under the total carbohydrate category that details all of the amount of sugar that has been added on top of the sugars already contained in a food product. I don't think people distinguish between sugars that are, quote, in a food product naturally, I suppose, versus added sugars. I don't think they make that distinction at all. And here's the other thing. Here's the big controversial thing that Jimmy's going to say on Jimmy Rants here today. I don't think there's a hill of beans difference between the, quote, natural sugars naturally occurring in there and the added sugars. There's so much of this emphasis on added sugars, which they're bad, don't get me wrong. But I think we need to be, as part of this re-education process, not just getting people to pay attention to added sugars, but to total sugars. But then even from there, one step further, and getting them to understand that all carbohydrates on that label turn to sugar in the body. I know people kind of get up in arms. Well, are you telling people that spinach and broccoli and all that turns to sugar in the body? Yes, I am. Total carbohydrates can turn to sugar in the body. Obviously, refined carbohydrates, grain, sugar, starches, those are going to convert very quickly into sugar and be metabolically horrible for your entire system. But you got to realize there's consequences to all the carbs that you eat. And so when you look at a label and you see it has 20 grams of total carbohydrate and then like maybe 5 grams of fiber in it, you might think, okay, that's 15 grams of net carbs. Net carbs is nonsense. There is no subtraction magic that can take away the impact of carbohydrates. Yes, fiber will be digested slower, but slower does not mean not at all. Okay? I know this is somewhat controversial within the keto space. You will hear me hammer down hard on counting total carbohydrates. So back to what we're talking about in this story. And if you're just joining us, there is a new added sugars line that's going to be on the nutrition facts of foods now. And I think it's a good first step in this re-education for people to understand what the impact is of the carbohydrates they're consuming. But I think added sugars is just a first step. We need to not only let people know about all sugars, which would be on that label, but also all carbohydrates and the fact that they could turn to sugar in the body. And here's kind of a cool way to realize how much of that sugar load is in the food you're eating. Let's say the total carbohydrate in a food is, let's say it's 20 grams. Okay, so 20 grams total carbohydrate, you divide by 4. 4 is the number of calories per that's per gram of carbohydrate. Okay, and so 4 calories in each gram of carbohydrate. 4 grams equals a teaspoon. So when you look at number of teaspoons of carbohydrate that is in that turns to sugar in the body, that is in a food. You take the 20, you divide it by 4. How many teaspoons of sugar does that equal? It's 5. 4 times 5, 20. So that's why you need to understand it. And I wish they would put on the food packaging on the front cover teaspoons of sugar as like a little insignia. Could you imagine what they do with Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola has 45 grams of high fructose corn syrup sugar in it. So you divide 45 by 4, and that's 11 and a speck of a teaspoon. Can you imagine like 11 teaspoons of sugar right there listed on the front? They'd have to like, it'd be hilarious actually. I would love that. But that would be the visual that would help people much more so than added sugars. Added sugars just adds a little bit to the confusion. I do like the fact that they're trying to give people more information to make better choices, but honestly, I think this makes it a little more convoluted than it needs to be. And I just realized, I didn't have my light on. Sorry, guys. So, the new label, first proposed in May 2010 from the FDA, adds a new line under total carbohydrate. If consumers had access to this new label, their food choices could prevent more than 350,000 cases of heart disease, nearly 600,000 cases of type 2 diabetes over the next 2 decades, researchers predicted using computer models. What I would want to know is, okay, we eliminate added sugars. How many more lives would we save if we eliminated total carbohydrates down to a certain level? Have they ever done that computer analysis? What if we told people, okay, forget added sugars, forget sugars, let's limit total carbohydrate to a certain amount? You ever stop to think about that? Run those computer models. Maybe 350,000 cases of heart disease would be prevented, would turn into 35 million cases of heart disease prevented. Maybe 600,000 new cases of type 2 diabetes over the next decade could turn into 60 million cases of type 2 diabetes prevented. If we got on this bandwagon of realizing the negative impact that total carbohydrates are having on our body. I know it's radical when you're not in this space. We understand it because we eat keto. We realize the power of this. But when you start talking about carbohydrate elimination or drastically cutting in the mainstream of nutrition, they have a hard enough time adding added sugars onto the label. If you start to talk about reducing it down in the carbohydrate content, the total carbohydrate, people about lose their minds. And I think this is where the re-education comes into play, you guys. We try to tell people and teach people, like that lady at the bank today, I was able to impart so much knowledge on her in a very short amount of time. She was just like, oh my gosh, where have you been? I have never heard any of this stuff you're talking about. And I said, I know. It's called job security for Jimmy Moore right now because this is such new information for so many people. And they want to put things, emphasis on things like added sugars, when I think they should be putting a heavy emphasis on educating people on the effects of total carbohydrates. All of these saved lives would save the United States $31 billion in healthcare costs and $62 billion in productivity and other societal costs, according to the researcher. She's an associate professor at the Tufts University School of Nutrition Science and Policy in Boston. I would love to talk to Renata Misha, she's the senior researcher, and have them run these exact same models with all that financial savings and cases of people preventing disease with a ketogenic diet. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if they run those numbers of what a ketogenic diet, just based on what so many of us have seen anecdotally, what some of the studies have shown about ketogenic diets and their impacts on type 2 diabetes, you can reverse type 2 diabetes almost completely through a ketogenic diet. Invariably so. And heart disease, when you eliminate carbohydrates, you eliminate the very thing that is exacerbating most people's heart health. And then you reduce vegetable oil consumption as well, and you get even greater benefit. Run those models, Renata Misha. I want to see that. I'd love to see that. Could you imagine? They would crap their pants in the mainstream of nutritional health if those models came back and talked about hundreds of trillions of dollars that would be saved and tens of millions of cases of people getting disease no longer happening. That would be cool. These effects could be even stronger, they say in this study, if the new nutrition facts label prompts food manufacturers to reduce the amount of sugar that they add to products. What I want to know is why add sugar to any product that's not already naturally occurring. I know the American palate requires sweeter foods, but I would argue if, as part of this re-education process, you explain to people, yes, I understand you got a sweet tooth. Yes, we want to help you with that. And the way you help yourself with that is you eat in such a way where you titrate back on those foods that have added sugar. That's what a ketogenic diet does for you. And then before long, because you feel so good, your taste buds change. Guys, I used to drink 16 cans of Coke and Little Debbie snack cakes and fast food. I was a sugar addict and a half. And yes, it was hard in the early days of the Atkins diet and switching over to more of a low carb type of diet. But it was a very quick turnaround. Within weeks, I was already no longer, desiring all of those sweet things that I thought I could never live without anymore. And that's how quick it is. This could be a part of the re-education for people. Give them opportunity to have lower sugar type of options, lower added sugar type of options, and then before long, see if they can titrate off of that completely. That's the way you do this. Not requiring food manufacturers to do this. Now, the food manufacturers, they're just trying to make a buck. So at the end of the day, they're going to do whatever it takes to appease that customer. I've done other Jimmy Rants where we know they have used marketing tactics, promoting things like Hawaiian Punch and things back in the day. So we know the things that they're willing to do all at the altar of the almighty dollar, trying to make a buck. So for them, it's about money, 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 money. What's the consumer going to buy? And so if there is a will for them to stop adding so much sugar, and they think that would be a marketing term that they could throw on there, ooh, no added sugars, and they're already doing that on a lot of foods now, then they'll do it. If this added sugar label prompts the food industry to reformulate even a portion of its products to have fewer added sugars, these health and financial benefits would be doubled which is a staggering impact. I will repeat my assertion here. The problem is not added sugars. That's not the only problem. It is the first step in a re-education process. I think we are over-sugarnated. Yes, I just made up a word. America is over-sugarnated, and if we get people to stop being so addicted to sugar, and not just sugar, not the white stuff sugar, anything that turns to sugar in the body, and that includes all carbohydrates. That's a part of this re-education. And if we get them to reduce that total load of carbohydrates in their diet, forget about doubling the benefits. How about a factor of 10, 20, 30 times these estimates that they're having in this study? It would be amazing. Added sugars, they say, account for more than 15% of Americans' total daily calories. Somebody's eating a whole lot of mine because I'm not having any added sugars in the foods that I eat. And even in the foods I eat, I don't even have sugars, much less added sugars, and very minimal carbohydrates. And right now, 0 carbohydrates on this keto carnivore that I'm doing. The 15% of added sugars total in the Americans' daily total calories exceeds the recommended level of less than 10, the researchers said in their background notes. Why are we even encouraging people to have 10% of added sugars? What are those added sugars doing calorically, nutritionally in our diet? Calorically, they're adding calories that are empty. Nutritionally, nothing. There's nothing that you get in the added sugars that they're putting in the food. The added sugar's sole purpose is palatability. Because again, they know the American palate desires and wants to have more and more sweet. And when you're more and more sugar addicted, I can attest to this firsthand, you guys. When you are sugar addicted and you eat sugar and high fructose corn syrup and have that hit your taste buds every hour on the hour all the time, you become numb to the sweetness that's in foods. And it wasn't until I gave up all of those things and embraced real whole foods that I realized there's sweetness in almonds, which I never knew was there before. Now, strawberries blow my head off, they're so sweet. And back in the day, I didn't think strawberries were sweet at all. People put powdered sugar on strawberries. I'm going, ugh, they're already way too sweet to me. I can't even eat any fruit, because it's just so sweet. It can be tough to recognize added sugars by looking at the list of ingredients on a label. No, it doesn't. All you got to do is look for anything ending in OSE. If it ends in OSE, it's an added sugar. Even things like honey, maple syrup, they throw all those things into foods as well. Those would be added sugars. It's not that hard to identify added sugars. So that's a ruse. Brown sugar, corn sweetener, corn syrup, dextrose, fructose, glucose, high fructose corn syrup, honey, lactose, malt syrup, maltose, molasses, raw sugar, and sucrose are some of the many different ingredients that contribute added sugars to food, according to the CDC. So they're lamenting that there's all these added sugars in the food. Where were they when all these food companies were adding this crap to the food supply? Where were they? Why suddenly have they had an epiphany? Oh, I guess all these things that they've been putting in there. My favorite one, by the way, is evaporated cane juice. If you ever see evaporated cane juice as an ingredient, that's just sugar. It's silly, the games they have played. And the CDC, to point this out now, you are just as complicit as the FDA. Oh, well, we had an epiphany. We need to make no added sugars on the nutrition facts. We should, show people what they're getting. They have known about this forever. Why are they suddenly having this grand awakening that added sugars are part of the problem? And again, if you're just joining us, they've added the new added sugars line on nutrition facts label of foods I think it's only the first step in the re-education process because I don't think it goes far enough. We don't need to be focusing in on added sugars. We don't need to just be focusing in on even sugars because even the naturally occurring sugars are still sugar. I think we should be teaching people what total carbohydrates look like when they're metabolized because most of them turn to sugar in the body. Some slower than others. Green leafy, non-starchy vegetables turn to sugar a little bit slower than, say, refined carbohydrates, but they all turn to sugar. So that's where you divide the total carbs by 4, and it gives you the number of teaspoons of sugar metabolically that is creating. To make things simpler for consumers, the FDA proposed a new line on the nutrition facts label that totals up all of these extra sources of added sugars. The line would note the number of grams of added sugar and the percentage that they contribute to the average daily calorie count. Okay, they think they've done something. And guys, I don't want to totally poo-poo this because I think it is a good first step. Let's talk about added sugars. Great. But then let's continue that education and tell people, oh yeah, those sugars that are in there, quote, naturally, they're going to naturally raise your blood sugar as well. And then once people understand that, then add in the last layer of, oh, you know, those total carbohydrates, they aren't without problem in your diet as well. If you divide that by 4, it's the number of teaspoons of sugar that's in that food. And oh yeah, by the way, how many teaspoons of sugar is in the entire body right now? If you're a human being, you have exactly 1 teaspoon of sugar in your body. So every time I drank a Coca-Cola back in the day, that was over 11 teaspoons of sugar. I flooded my body with 11 times the amount of sugar than what's in my bloodstream. 11 times. And that was just 1 Coke. I did that times 16 every day. Every day. Unfortunately, the FDA has delayed implementation of the no added sugars label until 2020. What these results tell us is that there's a need for timely implementation of this label. So it's good that this researcher is wanting to push the FDA to get this out there a little quicker. But guys, they're in no hurry. They're in no hurry because, again, they've known about the effects of these added sugars for years. We had John Yudkin. He was a researcher in the early 70s who was sounding the alarm on sugar in the diet. Right at about the same time the high fructose corn syrup was developed. And he was shunned, you guys. They silenced him. They basically blacklisted him in research circles because the darling theory that was out there regarding obesity and disease was saturated fat was causing all of these things. So when he comes along and says, you know, I'm looking at a lot of the effects of these sugars, they're really, really not that great for us. Why are we encouraging people to cut the fat? It's actually the sugar that's far worse. But they shunned him. That was in 1971, 1972, somewhere around there. He knew. He knew. So we've known this for decades. Decades. And yet now they want to suddenly have this epiphany of, oh, I guess we should tell people about no sugar added on food label. Yeah, too little, too late. For this study, Misha and her colleagues used an already validated model that takes into account a variety of information, demographics, risk factors, dietary habits, and disease to project the impact of a revised nutrition facts label on consumers' food choices, their long-term health, and the economic cost of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. Again, I wish they would run those exact same models on what it would look like if keto was embraced by all Americans. Would you like to see that statistic? I think some of those statistics would blow them away. Now, would it make everybody turn keto overnight? No, it would not. But it would be interesting to see. Previous studies have shown that better information does help consumers make smarter choices. For example, trans fat labeling led people to avoid products rich in these very unhealthy fats, which prompted the food industry to remove them from their products. So they are going to compare no added sugars to trans fats. So did you guys stop buying foods when you saw that they included trans fats on the labeling and that made you not want to buy it? Here's how they got around that one, you guys. There is this flaw in the labeling on a food label. If a product has less than 0.5 grams of something, they can legally put 0. So what the trans fats people did was they made the serving size so ridiculously small so that they could fall below that 0.5 on the label, so they could put a big fat 0 trans fats, and they'd even throw that on the front of the packaging, 0 trans fats. Then you would look at it and a normal portion would be like 2 to 3 times the serving size. So if you go 3 times 0.4, that's over 1 gram of trans fat, and then people would eat that. Oh, I got 0. They wouldn't count it. You see the games that they played, and they're going to pull the same thing with no sugar added. They'll be able to put 0 sugar added and say no sugar added as a nutritional claim on the front packaging, but it'll be that 0.4 and it'll be ridiculously small portion sizes. They know how to play the games, you guys. And I think we need to be onto them sooner than later, which is why I'm telling you all about this here today on Jimmy Rants. The director of the Mount Sinai Weight and Metabolism Management Program, Dr. Reshmi Srinath, expects the same would occur if people had better information about added sugars. In my experience, people are now more conscious of their sugar intake, are reviewing food labels, and want to make healthier food choices. Clear labeling of sugar content is crucial in helping people make these right choices. So I don't disagree with that. But again, as I've been talking about in this Jimmy Rants, this is only a first step in re-educating people. Telling people to avoid added sugars is great, but then they think by extension of, oh, this one has no added sugars, but the naturally occurring, quote unquote, naturally occurring sugars is 20. Think about a dried fruit type of product. Dried fruit is one of the most concentrated forms of sugar that is, quote, naturally occurring in a food that you would buy. And so people would see like dried mangoes, no added sugar. Oh, that's great. But then you look at the actual sugar, and per serving, it's like 27. So 27 grams of, quote, naturally occurring sugar. Oh, it's not added sugar. This is healthy. You see where I'm going here? So again, I don't think this added sugars line goes far enough. I think you need to educate people that even the, quote, natural sugars are still just as bad. And then after that, then explaining about the total carbohydrates. Misha said the most striking finding from the study came when researchers predicted what might happen if the food industry responded to the new label by reducing the amount of added sugars in their products. Even a partial industry response would result in 700,000 fewer cases of heart disease, 1.2 million fewer cases of type 2 diabetes over the next 20 years, according to the model. So again, if they embraced keto and had no sugars, no added sugars, no sugars, and minimal carbohydrate per serving to below 10, I want them to run that model. What would that look like? And if the food industry reacted in such a way to formulate their products that would not just reduce added sugars, would reduce sugar and reduce the total carbohydrate load? Johnny bar the door on the number of people that would no longer get type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, all of the chronic diseases of our day that are all related to insulin resistance. The insulin resistance that, oh yeah, by the way, instigated by the number of carbs that we're eating in our diet. You see how all this is related, you guys? The industry should be part of the solution. We saw when we did account for even modest industry reformulation, maximum health and economic gain can be achieved. This new study, by the way, was published April 15th edition of the journal Circulation. So guys, it's a good first step. I love what they're trying to do. The problem is, as with everything else that happens, it's all incremental. And to me, I see this as incremental change that might have a nominal impact. Oh, this has 3 more grams of added sugars. I need to put that back. That's too many. Never mind, it has 14 grams of just sugar and 28 grams of total carbohydrates. Oh, but it doesn't have any added sugars. Let me buy that. It's going to be yet another one of those things that they'll put a health claim on the front packaging. No added sugars. So if it's no added sugars, people will read that and be like that lady from the bank earlier. Oh, it has avocado. It's made of avocado. And then you look on the back and it's still mostly soybean oil, but it has avocado. That's the way they're going to market this no sugar added. Big old no sugar added right there on the front packaging. But then you turn it on the back and it still has sugar. It still has lots and lots of carbohydrate. Is that going to make people healthier? Are they still going to be able to make better choices? Nominally so, I suppose. I don't think these models of all the lives that will be saved from heart disease and type 2 diabetes will be near to the point that they think it is, as compared with if they truly took away all sugars, added and otherwise, added and naturally occurring, and then educated people with teaspoons of sugars on the front packaging of total carbohydrates divided by 4. That would be the teaspoons of sugar. I would love to make that the change. That would be a powerful visual. The problem is the food industry, no way, no how, would ever go for that. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. We'll come over to you here in just a minute on Facebook Live. Let's hop on Instagram Live first. Thank you guys for being here. Sam says people still aren't going to read the labels. That was supposed to read it. They already knew about this. Yeah, that's right. That's part of the challenge here, is you can change the label, but a lot of people aren't reading the label at all. They also add sugars with different names, and it's still not considered sugar. Yeah, there's a new one in the keto space right now that I definitely want to do a Jimmy Rants about, called allulose. And it's supposedly this sugar that's not a sugar, but they list it as sugar on the label. And it's supposed to not raise your blood sugar and not raise your insulin. It's good for diabetics, but it's still listed as freaking sugar on the label. I got my doubts about that. And of course, what makes it very challenging is it ends in OSE. In fact, I've had some companies want to advertise on my podcast that include allulose in their formulation. And they're like, yeah, you'd be the one to educate people. I'm like, it ain't my job to educate people on why this isn't sugar and it's listed as sugar and blah, blah, blah. It's a mess right now with allulose. And there's people in the keto world embracing allulose like it's the next best thing. And I'm going, guys, I don't trust it as far as I can throw it. It ends in OSE. It's included in the sugars on the packaging. It would be included in the total carbohydrates on the packaging. How could I, the keto guy in good conscience, put my name behind and rah-rah support for something that shows up as sugar, and then a newbie comes to me and go, oh, I thought you weren't supposed to eat sugars. How is this different? And so, oh, this is the exception. They would boo me out of the room. Mary says, most people just want what they want. They still don't care. Well, I think that is changing somewhat. I do agree with you that the sentiment is still kind of blasé, but I do hope that it is changing. Alberto says, I think this is a new gimmick to sell a new label like Heart Healthy, which means nothing. They know that most people won't look or don't know how to read nutrition facts. Exactly, Alberto. People need to use their brains, not rely on big food to give them any info. Well, sadly, I don't necessarily want to put all the onus on the consumer, because most people are just living their lives. But there's a lot of people that need to get woke, as the kids say these days, because there's just too much information out there now that it kind of is a little bit irresponsible for someone not to know. But I mean, people live their lives, they're in the day to day, they don't want to become a nutritional health expert, having to learn how to read labels. So I give them a little bit of slack, but it's up to us to educate those people within our sphere of influence, friends, family, coworkers, whoever, to tell them information. When I was talking to that lady at the bank today, it was like I was talking another language to her she's never heard before. And I was translating what it meant. And she's like, why have I never heard this stuff before? And guys, I was only with her like 5 minutes. Can you imagine if I was with her for an hour? Or if she watched Jimmy Rants, which I told her all about, by the way. She said, thanks for all this information. For those of us outside the U.S., the U.S. nutrition facts are used. It takes a while for these information to be trickled down. You at least give a hint so we can search. Yes. Raw honey without added sugar, says Alberto. Yes, Alberto. Raw honey has no added sugars whatsoever. That makes it healthy, right? Charming Confessions, reading labels makes me so angry. So much crap in there. It's not needed. So glad keto has led me away from all of that. Yeah. I even tell people, even before you get to the nutrition facts and before you look at the front of a packaging, look at the ingredients list. The one that gets me the most are all these new vegan burgers that are out there. An animal-based burger is beef. That's it. This chemical crap storm of vegan burgers has like 25, 30 different ingredients, soy protein isolate and binders, and it's just disgusting, all the stuff they have to put on it. Yeah, look at the ingredients list. Mary says, I had a pedicure today. The girl working on me was very overweight, so I talked to her about my keto journey. Well, that's awesome. Always have that conversation. And it's kind of interesting for me because not everybody knows who I am locally, which I love, by the way. I don't want to be recognized locally. I love kind of being incognito. Although the guys at Costco, they know me well because a lot of my books have gotten into Costco. Oh, hey, here's the keto book writer. And so, yeah, that's me. But it opens up opportunities where, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an author. What do you write about? Nutrition. Oh, have you heard about keto? Yeah, I've heard a little bit about keto. Alberto says, apple juice without added sugar. Small notes. Just all the sugar we managed to squeeze the hell out of 40 apples for 16 ounce. Exactly. Apple juice can be as bad as Coca-Cola. Yeah, if you look at the amount of sugar that's in apple juice, orange juice, grape juice, and then you look at the amount of sugar that's in a Coca-Cola, you're exactly right, Mary. It can be upwards of 45 grams of sugar. Oh, but it's natural. Yeah, it's naturally going to raise that blood sugar and insulin too. Alberto says they know people will buy labels and not real food. That's true. B.S. Bird says sugar addiction is very insidious and powerful. That it is. Coconut sugar, says Charming Confessions, is one that people tend to think is okay because it says coconut, but it's still sugar. Yeah, I see a lot of my friends in the paleo community talking about putting coconut sugar, and there's a phrase that I hear my friends in the paleo world talk about, refined sugar-free recipe. So refined sugar-free. But what they're telling you by telling you it's refined sugar-free is while there's no refined sugars in their product, in their recipe, they're still using dates, maple syrup, honey. None of those would be refined sugars, but they're still sugars. I hate that refined sugar-free. It's like, okay, you just pulling the wool over people's eyes. This smells fishy, says Alberto. They want to release it on 2020 at the same time as the new dietary guidelines that vilify the keto diet. Yeah. B.S. Bird, it seems to me that most people don't read nutritional information on the label, probably giving the consumer more credit than is warranted. Oh boy, yeah. Alberto says Oreo cookies serving size is 1 cookie. Yeah. Who just has one Oreo cookie? Back in the day, I was lucky if I didn't have one package of Oreo cookies, the whole freaking thing, especially the double stuff back in the day. Just thinking about eating an Oreo now is just disgusting. All right. I'm going to come over to Facebook now. Welcome in, you guys. Thanks for being here. Hello, hello. I like the new label, but the people that don't read labels are still not going to read it. Luis, you're right. They can put all the facts they want on that nutrition label. They can parse out added sugars from naturally occurring sugars from carbohydrates that are in a food. But at the end of the day, if they don't read it, what good is it, right? Kimberly says, I'm a label watcher and I enjoy reading them. I've seen this new sugar line on a few things already. You're always on the front line of new information. Thank you, Kimberly. I try to be. Tammy likes my word, sugarnator. Jessica says, ugh, shaking my head. Did somebody over there come out of their sugar coma? Better late than never, I guess. Yeah, it's a first step, Jessica, but hopefully they will take the next step and educate people why sugars that are even naturally occurring are bad, and then from there, why carbohydrates can be potentially harmful. They can also charge more if it's a healthier product, Tammy says. Yes, if they have no sugar added will have this perception in the consumer mind that it's healthy. No sugar added means, all right, there's still sugar in here, there's still carbohydrate in here, we just didn't add any more of that crap in here. That's all no sugar added means. I thought allulose was okay, says April. See, that's the thing, April. I am skeptical. I realize there's a lot of companies in the keto space using allulose, and I'm so skeptical. And I realize the FDA has not given them generally recognized as safe status. They haven't recognized it as something that could be removed from the total carbs and sugars on a nutrition label. If they allow it to be sugar on a label and they allow it to show up in the total carbohydrates on a label, I don't know how anybody in the keto space in good conscience can tell people that that's okay to eat on keto. I just don't. I don't know how they do that. I would be eviscerated by people that listen to me on my podcast, watch me on this Jimmy Rants, if I promoted a product that had 18 grams of sugar, because that's how allulose is listed on the label, and that would get put into the total carbohydrates of a food, I would get murdered. There's no way I could save my reputation promoting a product like that. It could be the best darn thing in the world. So my suggestion for somebody that thinks allulose is okay is get some, test your blood sugar. Test your blood sugar at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 120 minutes. And look what the curve does to your blood sugar. Now, if it doesn't impact your blood sugar, great. The problem is, what if it does? And also, like maltitol, I wonder about the gastrointestinal impact of allulose and the gut health impact of allulose. Does it harm your gut health? We don't know. It hasn't been tested. So, again, I should probably do a whole Jimmy Rants all about allulose and my concerns about it. But you'll hear a lot of people in the keto space bragging all about allulose, but not Jimmy Moore. Soy protein isolate has never been tested on humans, says Frank. And yet they put it in all those Franken vegan foods. I read labels like a mofo, says April. Dawn says, does that mean the no better products is a no-no? So, no, I'm not going to tell you not to have the no foods products. There's several companies out there making allulose types of products. I'm just telling you that it's listed as sugar on the label. It's listed as total carbohydrate on the label. I don't know how a leader in the keto space, such as myself, would be able to get away with talking about that in a positive way without the newbie coming to me and going, wait a minute, I thought if it ended in OSE, it's a sugar. I thought if it had sugar on the label, you're not supposed to eat it. I thought you were supposed to reduce your total carbohydrates. It's probably a public perception thing more than anything. And perhaps allulose will be found to be totally benign. But until that is all vetted out, I won't be pushing anything that has allulose in it. I was using it. I guess I won't anymore. Could be why I'm having trouble losing weight. So April, test your blood sugar. That's really the take-home message. Hey Di says no sugar added, and then you see grams of sugar. Exactly. But what they're talking about with no sugar added, Di, is not that there's no sugar in the product. It means they've added no extra sugar. You know what? Who's really notorious about this is ice cream companies. I'll see in the grocery store no sugar added ice cream. So people, oh, no sugar. Oh, great. But it's no sugar added. What I want to know is what's the naturally occurring sugar that's in like ice cream that you didn't add to it? What are we talking about? But no, they still have sugar in them. And again, as I'm making the case here on this Jimmy Rants is, let's not forget about those foods that turn to sugar in the body. All carbohydrates eventually turn to sugar in the body. So I think the most intellectually honest way to handle this is not to highlight added sugars, not to highlight even sugars, but to highlight total carbohydrates and encourage food companies to divide that number by 4 and on the front package identify how many teaspoons of sugar is in their product by dividing the total carbs by 4. Powerful visual, you guys. And there would be some packages that they wouldn't have enough room to put all the teaspoons of sugar on it. All right, guys. So the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants, we've got great news happening out there because they are giving a crap about educating consumers. The problem is it's just the first step by putting added sugars now as a line on the nutrition facts label. It's a good start, a good first step in this re-education. But I think we need to go a step further. And so many of us, if you follow Jimmy Rants, you already know this, but a lot of your friends, your family, your coworkers, that lady at the bank today, they're still trying to learn. They're still trying to kind of vet their way through all of this stuff. And we need to be there to help them. It's one reason I educate you here on Jimmy Rants, because you need somebody who'll be right there with you and help you learn about this stuff, and then to pass that information on to those people you love. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, you can engage live in the content. I start off over on Instagram Live right here. Instagram, I'm at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. We also simulcast live here on Facebook. Stick around Facebook. We'll be here with the after party here in just a moment. If you missed the live on Instagram, be sure to watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. But after 24 hours, it does disappear. You'll need to go check it out on YouTube. I have all the past episodes up on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Also, youtube.com/livinglowcarbman. What are we going to do when you're away? We'll die. I will have a buttload of backlists that you can go check out. You can also listen to the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at jimmyrants.com. So Instagram Live. Until next time, we'll see you then.